Hello everybody, I'm the Bear Bow Brummy and welcome to part 5 of setting up a recurve bow. Today we're going to work on our knock point. Now, knock point is probably the most important part of setting up your bow because it has the biggest effect on your arrow. If your knock point is set either too high or too low, you'll get a thing called porpoising. Porpoising is as your arrow flies through the air, rather than fly dead straight like that, it goes like this, which is a really bad thing. And so if you get your knock point set correctly, your arrow won't do that. If you see your arrow fly through the air like this, clearly your knock point is either too high or too low. I'll show you how to find out which way it is later on in the video. Now when I set a knock point, I tend to use a brass knocking point to work out my knock height. Simply because I don't normally shoot with brass knock points, I shoot with tied knock points. I'm going to do a video later on how to tie your own knock points, but that's for the future. But for now we're going to use a brass knock point simply because brass knocks are easy to fit, really easy to adjust, and once we get the height correct we can then remove it and put a tied knock point on if you want, or you can leave the brass knock point on for yourself. It doesn't really matter either way, it's personal choice. You only need 2 tools for the job. You'll obviously need your bow square to set the height, and you'll need a pair of pliers. If you're going to use brass knock points permanently, I would advise buying a proper pair of knocking pliers because they're specially designed for the job. I only ever use mine to set up a bow and then I remove them again, so I used an ordinary pair of pliers. That's perfectly okay. So I'm going to reposition the camera so you can see quite clearly how the whole setup procedure goes. Okay, back in a minute. Now as you can see, I've set my bow square up so it's sitting on my bow nicely. I've got it at such a point where the bottom edge of the bow square here is just touching the arrow rest. You see it actually still moves, very lightly touching it. And that's the point you need to place it. From this point you take your brass knock point, and I'm going to put my knock point at 10 millimeters above the level of the rest. So if I just slide that down there like that, you can see that that's now at 10 millimeters, right on the bottom edge of the brass knock there. And then all I do, very simply, just close the brass knock up like that. And for the purposes of setting up my bow, that's all I need to do. Now we've fitted our knocking point to our bow, we can finally get round to actually shooting some arrows. What I thought I'd do is I'd use a method called paper tuning just to check whether the knock point is in the right place. Now paper tuning is really interesting. It's a method that was used a lot but has gone out of favour somewhat now to most people bare shaft tune, which is fine. We'll probably do some of that later on, but for now we're going to do paper tuning using this thing here. It has quite a few advantages over bare shaft tuning, simply because you get instant results. All you'll get is a tear in the paper that'll give you instant feedback on what's going on with your arrow. There's no need to take any fletchings off your arrows. With bare shaft you're going to have to take the fletchings off and then put them back on again. With this method you don't need to do any of that. You should just shoot an arrow straight through it. And thirdly, and most importantly, you're only shooting from about 6 or 10 feet away, which means you can shoot in your back garden as long as you've got a boss behind it. You can shoot in your garage if the weather's not very good, because what I do. Or I even know some people that actually shoot in the living room, because they've got a fairly big living room, so they can do it in there and the conditions are perfect, there's no wind or anything. So there's no reason why you can't do that. Now, just before we start shooting, I just thought I'd show you what the setup is. I shoot from behind that white line, through the paper mounting there to the boss behind it. When you set up your mounting, make sure that the arrow can completely clear your paper from behind it there, so it doesn't interfere with your shot at all. What I'm going to do is shoot 4 arrows into that square, those squares there, and what I'm looking for is the shape of the tear in the paper. To give you an idea, I've done a little illustration. So if I get a tear like the one on the left, that means the knock is too high. If I get a tear like the one on the right, it means the knock is too low. We'll put it into practice and I'll show you exactly what we mean. Okay, so as you can see, I've got a piece of paper there with 4 squares drawn on it. The idea is to shoot 4 arrows, 1 into each square, and then have a look at the tear pattern and see how you need to adjust your bow. Okay, let's go. That's 1. That's 2. That's 3. And that's 4. Now you can see that that pattern's pretty consistent. I'll move you in a bit closer and we'll have a look at it. Well, that's interesting. You can see from that one there that the point clearly went into the paper just there, but the knock went into the fletchings went into the paper a little bit high, which tells you straight away that the knock point is too high. So I'm going to go away now back into the workshop because it's just started raining and lower the knock point down a bit, and then we'll come back out and have another go. See you in a minute. Okay, so that rain I mentioned in the last little clip ended up lasting the rest of the day. So we're back the following day now to finish off. I've lowered the knock point down by 3mm. Let's shoot 4 more arrows and see how we go. One. 2. And just from those 2 you can see there's a massive improvement. 3. And 4. Okay, what I think I'll do is I'll take it back into the workshop and I'll highlight the hole so you can see the difference between the 2 knock settings I had. Okay, so there you can see these ones here were the first 4 arrows I shot, and you can see the big ugly tears, and these 4 on the outside, so where I set the knock point down to 7mm, and you can see they're absolutely perfect. That one in particular is right in the center of the fletching marks. See the same with all 4. So that's perfectly okay, perfectly adequate knock point setting. I'm going to leave it at that. I can't get it any better. So there you go. That's paper tuning. And now we've set our knock point. We're ready to go out and do a little bit of archery. Your bow should be fine. We'll probably go and do a little bit of bear shafting once the weather improves. I'll see you again next time. I've been the Bear Bow Brummie. If you like the video, please click down there at the like button. If you want to subscribe to the channel, click the subscribe button down that side. I should link some videos there and there so you can see some of the stuff I've already done. I've been the Bear Bow Brummie. Ta-ra a bit.